Jack Grealish to Manchester City has entered advanced stages in negotiations between the two football clubs. Jack Grealish has been a long-term target of Manchester City, along with a plethora of other top-flight Champions League teams across the Premier League and Europe. Could this big money move happen this summer, with Aston Villa themselves looking at alternatives such as Jamaica's Leon Bailey? We're going to be delving into that story with a lot more detail. And, of course, touching on the fallout after Manchester United confirmed the signing yesterday of Raphael Varane. What is next for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his men? Will they be looking for midfield reinforcements? What's going to happen with the Paul Pogba situation? We're going to be delving into all of them today and much, much more. Arsenal, it's an interesting conundrum there, linked to many, many midfield players. The Ben White deal is closing in. But what next? What next for Arteta? How else can they improve? We also want to delve in and touch in today's show on the situation going on at Liverpool. Big claims yesterday by Liverpool-based journalist Carl Markham that it's unlikely that any new additional signings are going to come in. All that, plus touching on Spurs, the Haaland to Chelsea deal, Harry Kane updates as well. I'm joined by the wonderful Dean Jones. Hit that like button, share, subscribe. You know what's next. Here we go. Morning, one and all. Morning, Dean. How are you, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, you?
Mate, I'm top of the world. We've got Sancho, we've got Varane. I have to be impartial on this show, but it's like Christmas come early for me. So, yeah.
You're not doing a good job of hiding that, mate.
No, it's hard. Do you know, it's really hard. It's really, really... You ever been like in a really good meeting for work and it turns out to be an even better meeting than you expect, but you want to like all calm and collected, but you feel your face just like lighting up. You're like, oh, wow. Yeah, very, very happy indeed.
Yeah. It's funny though, because I've always thought, like in journalism, a lot of journalists won't say who they support and things like that, and people like to, keep all that stuff to themselves. And I'm like, well, look, everybody's a fan, right? Like, if you're not a fan, then you're not into this game in the same way that everybody else reading it and watching it is. So I always think that people like to know that you feel the same way that they feel. So I've always been quite upfront about the fact that, I mean, I'm a Fulham fan. It's very inoffensive. Like, not many people hate Fulham. There's not a lot to get excited about. Like, we're not signing Sancho and Varane, but mate, just enjoy it. Enjoy these days.
It's funny. I've actually never. That's one question I don't think I've ever asked you. Actually, is who you support. A lot of people last week were saying Dean's definitely a Manchester United fan, which I thought was mad.
Well, it's actually funny because my dad is a United fan, and growing up, he was a proper Cockney Red. So growing up, I did go to a lot of United games, really up to the treble season, and then I was hitting that age when you start to go to games yourself. And I live near Fulham. I used to play for Fulham, so I was getting free tickets and stuff. And it just carried on, really. It's just one of those things you start to go on your own and you get a taste of it. And
no one likes Fulham.
More sense.
You've got a neutral stand. I mean, that's how lovely Fulham is as a football club. You have a stand.
Don't talk to me about that. That does wind me up.
It's always a game. There was one away game for when Man United played there that I could always get tickets for because you just buy them direct from the club and sit in a neutral stand. It was amazing. But there we go. Lots going on in the transfer market, mate. Obviously, you're a very, very busy man at the minute. The biggest talking point yesterday, of course, we got the. I will say we got the scoop. I'll tell you afterwards as well, because I will share it with you. We got the scoop, but even on Fabrizio, that the deal was at total agreement. I did use those words on purpose as well yesterday, so I was very, very happy about that. What's next for Manchester United, as far as you're aware? We know the medical's happening this week. The announcement will come at some point in the next 5 to 7 days. What's next, though? Paul Pogba seems big on the agenda. Is he going to stay? Is he going to sign a new deal, or is he going to go to Paris Saint-Germain? What's the latest in relation to Mr. Pogba and his future at Old Trafford?
Well, United are expecting a bid to come in from PSG. I think they've been sounded out from people, which has given them that inclination that something's going to come along here. But I'm pretty skeptical of how this is going to open up, because as somebody said to me, think about it from Pogba's point of view right now and how he wants his career to pan out from here. Pogba is 28. He turns 29 in the coming season. This is his big contract. This is the contract that potentially defines his career. Why would he sign a new contract at Man United right now, a long-term big money one that could leave him getting stuck like we've seen with so many other players? And would he really jump in to a PSG project right now when he knows in a year's time his dream move to Real Madrid could open up? Real Madrid want him to wait. So do Juventus, because they can't sign him right now. They haven't got the money to do so. So they're hoping he'll be patient right now. So even if PSG come bidding, and look, United would probably welcome a bid. They'll put a fee of about £45 million on his head if they do. And it solves a problem for them, because United need Pogba to either leave now or sign the new contract. But they can't force him to do either of those things. And it's just as likely that he says, no, I'm just going to carry on as I am, head into January, see how the first half of the season goes. Look, he's excited about as you are, about Varane and Sancho. And there's a potential here that he's part of, it does become part of something cool and special, and he wants to hang around. If that's the case, then maybe he will sign a new contract towards the end of this calendar year going into January. But if not, in January, he can then open those conversations with other clubs about a pre-contract. You've got to look at it from that player's business sense, also the player's career sense. What's Pogba going to do for the next 4 years? This stage now, 29 to 33, such an important time for him, because the last 3 years haven't gone the way that he's wanted it to. And he can't carry on like that. Like, that can't happen for the next 3 years as well. This needs to be a success. And if he signs a deal that's nearly 400 grand a week at Man United for another 3 or 4 years, his price tag is going to be £100 million again. And he's not going to be able to get that move that he wants. So same with PSG. Like, potentially he could go there, I guess, for a couple of years and then get a move on the back of that. But you can't be sure of that. So it's a really, really fragile one for Pogba to kind of manoeuvre. And it's a big month for him to decide which direction he wants to go in.
Yeah, I agree. My reading of the situation is, based on what you're saying there, is almost, he's got options. He's got 3 options. And it isn't about, I don't want to be at Man United, I don't want to play for PSG, should I wait for Real Madrid? I don't think there's one thing that's leading the way. It's almost all 3 could go wrong. But all 3 of those decisions could go wrong for him, as you say. So it's a very difficult thing. He could go PSG and then not ever make his move to Real Madrid that he wants, as you say. There's the Man United situation. He might leave now and we just go on over the next 3 to 4 years to bigger and better things, and he's left too early, almost Philip Coutinho-esque in a way. I know he won things, but he was a fringe player at clubs winning things. He wasn't that main player. There's almost this element of he could bolt a little bit too early. I mean, he could get to January and this new Real Madrid under Ancelotti is looking absolutely awful. United are purring, and he decides to stay. So it's my sort of view on this over the last few days has been, I don't even necessarily know. We'll know by the end of the transfer window whether he's staying at Man United for this season or not. But in terms of his medium to long-term future, I still think that could be a good number of months away before we actually know what he's going to do, because it's so much at play here with Paul Pogba. I was just
going to say, look, we've seen how slow the discussions have been up to this point as well. And Raiola is the one who's constantly been coming out in public and talking about how Pogba wants to move and things like that. You can't just say things like that and expect them to be forgotten. Like, just go back. If you just Google now, Raiola, Pogba, future, and you can see all the quotes that he's come out with over the past 18 months or so. And you're like, well, why would this guy sign a new contract at Man United? Why would United even want him to hang around? And you also got to bear in mind that Raiola, is in his interest that Pogba actually moves on a free, because if he signs a pre-contract with Real Madrid or Juventus or whoever, he makes a lot more money than he does if anything happens this window. I'm not saying that will be everything for Raiola, but it matters.
Also, as of next season, the any deals, especially if the deal's done in the January, because any deal that happens after a particular date next summer, the fees they can take are capped as well, aren't they? So there is almost this. It's one of the reasons why we'll get onto Haaland a bit later. It's forget the clubs for a minute. There's a big Oriola to get these deals to go through now because of the 10%. I mean, even though 10% of a 65 million pound deal is a lot of money to me and you, when you might be able to pick up 30 million pounds this summer, it changes things dramatically. In terms of the rest of Manchester United's midfield, Saul Niguez is linked to the club, Ruben Neves, Camavinga, of course, Trippier in a different position. Is this Paul Pogba situation going to hold up any further signings at the club, or do you think United, we've seemed to be pretty good this summer at buying before we sell players, which is a complete turnaround. Do you expect to see that continue, or Man United almost hold back from new signings now until they clear a few players out?
Well, they are starting that clearer, aren't they? We're starting to see players be moved on now, and I think that was always the intention, that once we got to the beginning of August, they wanted to be sure about who had a future at the club, and the fringe players that weren't going to be there, were they moving them on frees or loans, and figuring that out. But it's a really tricky one for them, because you got to decide figure out what level of player you're coming in for here. As I was first told when Murta and Fletcher came in, they were looking for an emerging central midfielder to give them a year to mould into the side, to understand the philosophy of the club, to play in the same way that Solskjaer was trying, and get that player ready for the season after, almost, and just be a bit part for now. But if you've got the potential of Pogba leaving, then they've got to be ready to step up. So I guess that's where you're in that market of, do we get a Camavinga, or are we getting like a Ruben Neves? Like, Ruben Neves can come in now and he'll do a job. Camavinga, look, he's got all the talent, but he hasn't played at this level and this intensity, and he would find it hard at first. So that's why United need the PSG bid to come in pretty soon, to be honest. And United aren't going to accept a bid for Pogba in the last week of the window if they're not prepared for him to go. So that Neves deal still in the background. They can move on to that now. Now this Varane deal is being completed. The important thing about the Varane thing as well is that they've got him at even less than they really thought they would. And what that's done is it's left them with a little bit more money aside to put into the other deals that they've got on the horizon. So that Kieran Trippier deal, for example, where they were going lowballing on 10 million when Atleti want 30 million. Okay, we can start to meet them somewhere in the middle now with the 5-6 million that you've saved on Varane, because they had a budget of 50 million for a centre back, which they were going to go and put on Pau Torres or somebody. Yeah. So that changes things a little bit. Trippier, I still think they'll work on. It's not the absolute priority, but I do think they would like it. And then they've got now a month to work on a midfielder. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, it's not a disaster. United can be relaxed.
Yeah, and a lot of Man United fans would disagree with you, Dean, that there is almost this element of no CDM, no specialist CDM, no party. McFred we can't rely on as an example. I don't necessarily agree with all those fans. I don't think our midfield is as weak as people make out, but I would like to see an improvement. When you think of the players we're linked with, you mentioned Camavinga is someone that we've said that on many, many weeks. We know it isn't a now priority for Manchester United. Plus, he has his eyes set on Real Madrid, or maybe staying in PSG for another year. In terms of Neves and Saul Niguez, they seem to be the two Man United midfielders that fans would like, and we're linked with a lot. Which of the two do you think is more likely for Man United this summer?
I mean, I just haven't heard a lot about Saul Niguez personally. So it's hard for me to assess that one. So I would say, because of information I've had, and it all depends on your sources, but I know for a fact that they do like Neves, that they've been working on it in the background, and that it's reasonably far down the line. If they do want to progress with it, then they can, because the foundations have been laid. I don't know about Saul Niguez, how much their weight there really is behind that, so it's difficult for me to judge. There's enough out there for me to believe that there's some substance in it, but I'm skeptical, because Saul Niguez, this has happened quite a few times now,
Yeah.
whether it's Liverpool or Man United or Man
Sound
City at one point as well.
Yeah, Sound for Man United. He's been linked with this so many times. He's a player I want, but he almost feels he's never been as the rumors have never been as deep as Nicholas Gaetan or Wesley Schneider. But they're along that same ilk, because we get linked, and then there isn't anything tangible that ever comes out from that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it'd be an interesting one to see indeed. Viewers, any questions you've got about Man United's next signings, let me know. One of the questions people did want to ask is, who do you think is going to be leaving Man United now? Phil Jones, Tuanzebe, Bailly, like what, especially in the defensive areas, who do you think is going to be out the door in the coming weeks?
Well, they need to get rid of Phil Jones so Varane can have that 4, don't they? But I mean, look, Phil Jones it's a strange one, because you've got the loyalty to a player that's been there for 10 years. He's had real difficulties injury-wise. He hasn't played for 18 months. I think it was that Tranmere game, the last appearance, which was so long ago. And now United weighing up, like, do we just release this player on a free and let him try and revive his career? He's still only 29. And to be honest, half the Premier League would be interested in signing Phil Jones. West Ham, for example, have been interested in Phil Jones for quite a while. David Moyes really likes him. But what they need to know is, like, with Phil Jones, like, what's his next contract going to be? What's he looking for? Because realistically, all they're going to offer him is a low base figure, which is highly incentivized by appearances, because you've got to do that, because you don't know what you're going to get out of him at this point. So United do have to open up space, and they are considering Phil Jones. You know, Eric Bailly, as I said to you a while back, like, even though he'd signed that new contract, it didn't mean he was necessarily staying. Like, if they bought a new centre-back, then there was a good chance that Bailly would still become available for transfer, and that Villarreal are interested in taking him. So I think that will probably come back on the agenda over the next week or so as one of the names that could now depart. Yeah, so there's a few scenarios like that will open up. And obviously the Jesse Lingard one is a tricky one as well. He wants to prove himself. He wants to show that he can be a United player. Obviously, he scored at the weekend against QPR. He's not convinced that he's going to get the opportunities that he wants, and he needs to be convinced by the end of this window. Otherwise, he will want to go. He can't sit around, not after proving what he did for West Ham last season, how important he can be in this league. West Ham aren't particularly confident anymore that they can get him, because I think he's going to be priced out of joining them. And more than that, there's other clubs now interested in Jesse Lingard, who probably going to have better seasons than West Ham next year. When you look at, well, West Ham's a bit of a mess right now. They haven't signed anyone, and that's why Declan Rice wants to leave. So, yeah, it's a strange situation.
Absolutely. And viewers, we are going to move on to some Chelsea updates a little bit later. We're going to be talking Tottenham. We're going to be talking Arsenal. So if you're here for that news, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Maybe learn about a few other clubs along the way and what's going on from Dean Jones, who I've now been employed as his personal PR man.
Yeah. Get my followers up without me tweeting.
I have to say, mate, when I see, it's never any disrespect to other journalists, but I sometimes see things get put out by journalists or outlets, and I'm like, but you literally said that sitting on this show 6 weeks ago. I'm like, I've got to get someone their flowers and their praise when they've said it first. Really, it's one of them things. I'm a stickler for it. And again, if I
understand, yeah, I used to really bother. I used to let stuff like that get into my head. And the thing is, as a journalist, I think you look like, I don't like it when people start tweeting, as I said on blah, 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 this was going to happen. And that's because the game you're then playing is that, well, next week you're going to write a story that might not be right. And then you've got no defense when those people jump back at you, and you've got to take the rough with the smooth. And that's all we're doing really, is reporting what we're told and hoping that we're informing people. That's why I like this channel, because I'm just talking openly, right? I'm just telling you what I've heard, and I'm not going to speculate on stuff I don't know about. And hopefully, over the past month or so, I think we've led down the right path to where things have been going.
Pretty much as you say, and it's definitely. I mean, the Ollie's new deal was my favorite one. But there we go. Listen, I always give it. It doesn't matter who it is. Even on this point, if I have a guest or a caller say something and make a really great point, when I use that point elsewhere, I'll always pay homage to where it come from and say, I had a caller called so-and-so that said this, and I believe that same thing now. Like, I never try to take people's views, opinions, stories as my own. I just, something about that doesn't quite sit right with me.
Yeah.
But viewers, smash that like button for us this morning. Just under 1,500 of you tuning in. Biggest live audience we've had on the Done Deal show. So that's absolutely amazing. It's growing every week. So make sure the like button is hit. Make sure you subscribe. Get your super chat or member chat questions in for Dean. We do actually have one here from Cedric before we go on to the Jack Grealish news this morning. It says, Dean Terry, is there any substance in the news that Goretzka's signed a pre-agreement with United for next season?
I don't think so, no. I mean, they definitely have they sounded him out. They also sounded him out for this summer as well, just in case it was available and Bayern were already looking to move forwards if he wasn't going to stay, but they didn't really get very far with that. They definitely are interested. And again, it comes into that Pogba conversation of what's happening next, how we evolve in this midfield. But it's all going to depend on his he's in contract talks right now with Bayern Munich, and he's trying to get into that top tier of earners at Bayern, and he's struggling to get there. So he's a little bit frustrated. But I don't think, as far as I understand, that there's any pre-agreement there now.
There we go. Jack Grealish. Reports starting to come out now that talks in relation to his transfer are moving into advanced stages. I believe the Athletic have gone with that story this morning, and Sam Lee at the Athletic has said things are advanced. As you've told us on the show a number of times, Jack Grealish is heavily wanted by Manchester City. What's your latest understanding of Pep Guardiola's pursuit of the new Gaza?
New Gaza, yeah, better than Gaza, isn't it? Look, they haven't changed their stance at any point. Man City, they've been very set since March that they want Grealish and Harry Kane, and they haven't budged because they believe that they have an opportunity this summer to take advantage of the fact that they can spend more money than they normally would be able to. I mean, for those that don't, a lot of people say, well, FFP and all the rest of it. Well, FFP is relaxed right now. And since last June, owners are able to invest their own money into the clubs like they haven't been able to do in the past. And because of that, you're seeing PSG spend ridiculous money on wages. The signings that they've made, like, it's crazy the kind of cash they're throwing at people right now. And that's one of the reasons maybe Pogba will join PSG if they put 400 odd grand in front of him. But by the same account, like, Man City are able to go to that 100 million bracket, which they've never been able to do before. They've always stayed like 65, whatever it is that their record transfer is. And with Jack Grealish, there has always been a view from inside the club that this deal was more likely than the Kane deal, given the fact that they feel they are basically able to satisfy both the players' terms and the club's demands. So Aston Villa publicly are saying Jack Grealish isn't for sale, we won't sell him. I know that that's not strictly true, and that privately they are open to offers. But what they say, what they count as silly offers, and what that means is £80 million upwards will get you Jack Grealish. If you offer £80 million for Jack Grealish, and they'll open a conversation with you, and they'll say to their supporters at the end of the day, if he does leave, that the player had his head turned. It's a huge amount of money, close to, or if not a British transfer record, whatever it turns out to be. And yeah, City have been actively pursuing it, and they are the only club doing that with Jack Grealish right now. The player's on the back of the summer of his life. He almost won one of the biggest trophies in football. He's got a taste of it. He wants more of it, and he can go to City and take that extra step. So I think Villa will cave in if City do bid in the region of £80 million, and it'll be interesting to see what their opening offer is. But I think that if it's not as high as that, then that's the kind of figure we can expect them to head towards.
On these kind of this summer, and whether it's the way the clubs are pushing this news through certain journalists and publications, the Varane deal was almost the epitome of this. And I know you said it last week. I'll tell you a funny story about what you said last week as well, privately. I don't want to cause it. I don't want to cause a social media war. It actually made me die with laughter. You sort of said when Man United bid for Varane, it's when and not if, but almost along the lines of all the smaller the bids leading up to an accepted bid are done informally. I know we've had a laugh and a joke about this. You believe that's going on with the Jack Grealish situation? So the bid they put in will be accepted because it's almost. I'll give you an example. You hear like Arsenal made a bid, but they've got a bid. An outlet will say Arsenal have bid for Ben White. It's been turned down. They need 5 million more. And then within an hour, like a tier one that the socials will call them that's close to Arsenal will say, actually, no official bid has been made. Do you feel like that's the situation now that's going on with a lot of these transfers? A lot of these bids are going in informally, and it's almost now we're only going to see official bids made when they get accepted.
I mean, I think the first thing they do is they go to the players' camp and they talk about the terms that would satisfy the player, and that's obviously what City have done. When you talk about being at an advanced stage, like that will be a large extent of that. On the flip of that, if I know from talking to my sources that Villa are willing to listen to offers, then of course that these other guys going to in much higher positions than me are getting that same information and more information in regards of like what is needed in terms of a fee. And Man City are prepared to make a statement like never before in this window, and so they don't want to go as far as 100 million on Jack Grealish because I think that that's a bit too far, and they do too. But they've got a budget of over 200 million pounds for Grealish and Kane, and they'll have to wait and see what happens with Kane. But ultimately, they'll give Grealish as much of that as they can afford to if it means getting him.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Jack Grealish maybe closing in on this move to Manchester City. We had a poll running today on the stream, actually, just to gauge what people thought. And 52% think City will get Jack Grealish. Some of 48% still think they will not. A lot of skepticism from rivals of City, especially that they won't sign either Grealish or Harry Kane this summer. And it's probably worth having a little touching of base there because lots of stories came out last week about Harry Kane. 160 million pound bid, 400 grand a week. I think Alistair Gold then confirmed that it was the agent, of course, the brother of Harry Kane, that leaked this information to a journalist at The Sun that's not even a sports writer. He's like head of gossip columns or something. And what's your understanding of what's going on with Harry Kane? When is he due back at Spurs, and do you expect to see this transfer heat up in the coming weeks?
Yeah, so he's due back at Tottenham the week before the season begins. I think it's 7th, 8th of August, something like that. I know the person that wrote the story in The Sun. I've worked with her before on the newspaper, and I know how she gets stories. And while she's a showbiz reporter, she does like football, and she's got a few stories from football along the way. And I know the way that she works. So it wasn't a huge surprise to me that the story was all based around details being leaked from a wedding. I mean, obviously Kane's camp aren't going to say they leaked it, and I don't think Charlie Kane has phoned her from his wedding and said, "Oh, by the way, we're all talking about the fact my brother's going to join Man City." I don't think that's happened. But look, to put it this way, Tottenham completely denied it and was very bemused by the whole thing, as were Man City. But the main thing here that is kind of agitated them is, okay, so where has this story come from and who did leak it? And Tottenham's immediate thought was, well, okay, this is Kane's camp leaking it. And if that's the case, then this is not a way that you should be dealing with this situation. And if they're not convinced of otherwise, if Charlie Kane can't give them a convincing reason of like why this story's even come out, Daniel Levy is the type of man to say, do you know what? It's not actually 160 million anymore anyway. It's 180. And that's how he works. It will annoy him because, Levy's he doesn't want to sell Kane. He's got no intention to sell Kane. He would sell him if that offer came in because it's a lot of money. And I do believe that 160 million would probably get you Harry Kane in this window. But I think that story would have annoyed him. I know for a fact that story annoyed him. And it now changes things a little bit, I think. I still think City will come in with an offer. I think to be honest, it'll probably happen by the time Kane does return to training at Tottenham, because that's what Kane needs to happen. He needs to know that City have got his back here. He was bold. He came out before the Euros and said that basically he wanted to leave. Didn't say he wanted to join Man City, but might as well have. Now he needs to know that going back into training, that can happen. If you remember what he actually said, was he wanted this sorted out before the Euros, was his first statement, Harry Kane. I mean, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks before the Euros began, so there was no chance of that ever happening. But what he was really intimating was like he wanted this to at least have some legs going into the Euros, and it lost a lot of momentum, but now's the time he needs it to pick up, because look, Kane's not going to be fit enough anyway and ready to play in that first game of the season. Levy wouldn't have sold him before the season starts anyway. So this is one that will go down to the last week of the window, I would imagine. And there are new layers, I'd say, being added to it all the time, and whether Kane can actually get out of there.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one indeed. When we stay with Tottenham, of course, they've signed Brian Hill, and Eric Lamela has moved and gone elsewhere. A lot of talk about the Romero situation. Top centre back by all accounts. A lot of Spurs fans have phoned into the show and spoke about how good he is. Still a fair bit of work to be done on that deal, but how close do you believe Spurs are to securing Romero and making him come to North London?
Yeah, I do think it's close. My information is a bit blurred on it, so I haven't got it as concrete as people seem to have it from abroad. They seem to think that it's coming any minute, basically, from Italy. So, you know, I trust their judgment on that, because sometimes you do get a better view of things from outside England than you do inside it. But certainly, like, Tottenham set him aside as the top priority in the end. So they've accelerated it, but at the same time, they're still trying to sign other centre backs. It was always been their intention to sign 2 defenders. And we have to wait and see who that second person will be, because it does look, to be honest, like Romero will be one of them. Yeah, it's just a case of who else they can get through and what the price is going to be as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Koundé thing's interesting, I find, as well. Almost there was the bid, and then the player didn't want to speak to them, and the reports are sort of now along the lines of it sounds like Koundé's waiting to see whether Real Madrid come in for him, and if they don't, then maybe he'll speak to Tottenham. Yeah,
I mean, Koundé, Tottenham were quite optimistic about that at one point, and not for very long, because it quickly fell away. But there was certainly a few days when it looked like they thought the player fancied it, and he's had second thoughts on it. And as you say, he's probably just waiting to see what other offers come along and who else Tottenham sign, I guess, because, you know, he wants to be playing, and he doesn't want them to be signing another centre back that's potentially going to be paired with somebody else and he's left out. So yeah, so it's one to watch. He might come back on the radar, but it's unlikely, because at the moment they are pursuing other people.
There we go. Staying in North London, Arsenal are very close to securing their third big signing of the summer. Ben White, £50 million-ish medical going to be done. Still a lot of talk and negotiation about the midfield options. Maddison, Aouar, Neves, Basuma. Linked yesterday with, the name eludes me, AZ Alkmaar player as well. Lots of links with Arsenal at the moment. What's the latest there? Because, you know, they're sort of getting close to that £100 million of a spend. Bellerin and Xhaka may be on their way out. What's the current situation at the Emirates Stadium, Dean?
Yeah, so the big names that you mentioned there are all ones that they set out to try and sign at the start of the window, and they were ambitious, but they thought they'd give it a go. I don't think Basuma's joining. I don't think Maddison's joining. Aouar, I don't think has gone very far. So what's happening now is that Arsenal, while not giving up on those guys, they are having to reassess where they're at and start to open their ears, if you like, to people that are being pushed towards them, because that initial list was a list that Arsenal's recruitment team made up, and they were the targets that they wanted to go out and speak to. And, you know, as we head into August, you have to start becoming more open-minded about who this midfielder is going to be that you sign. and I think that's where we're at now. So yeah, let's see what agents push towards them, because Arsenal have to consider many different options. There's obviously the guys that are tested at the top level in the Premier League, but we've seen that they are also looking at signing players who are emerging, and that might be something they have to look at a bit more. But they've still got a good squad around them. They've still got enough talent there that they don't necessarily, this isn't like do or die. Like, I think Arsenal's squad is already starting to look better than it did last season. And they're certainly not done. They will sign 2-3 more. But yeah, I think there are some names that will emerge yet that aren't really being spoken about.
Yeah, you mentioned there about Bissouma and Maddison, of course, two names that really excited Arsenal fans a few weeks back. In terms of James Maddison, what's the issues there with not being able to move that forward? Because there have been reports that the Maddison camp and Arsenal have been sort of encouraged, and that they feel there's a deal can be done. What in your mind and from your view will stop the Maddison deal from going forward?
And there's a couple of aspects, really. I mean, Leicester don't really want to lose James Maddison. Leicester are also a club that really do let players move on when they feel like they can't keep them anymore. We've seen that happen in the past. Maguire, Mahrez, drink water if you like. But also from Maddison's point of view, is Arsenal the right club for him? That's been a serious consideration for like what he's won. If you think back a year or so, and he was being compared with Jack Grealish, and I think Man United were looking at Maddison and Grealish at the same time. So if Maddison's gone from being spoken about for joining Man United, and you see where they're heading now, you see where Jack Grealish is heading right now, he's going to Man City. Going from Leicester to Arsenal, I mean, technically it's a backward step right now, because Leicester are actually a better team. I know that Arsenal are a bigger club, but in terms of like where the next couple of years of your career are, is it the right choice for him? So I think there's been some hesitancy there, and Arsenal need to really persuade him, not necessarily the financials, but of the project, because he'd have seen, for example, Odegaard go into Arsenal and start brightly, but not really thrive and not really have much intent of coming back for a second stint. So if he's not doing it, why not? And he would have had discussions with people around that club as to the pros and cons of the way it's being run right now. And yeah, I just think there's some skepticism about whether this is really the right move for him.
And on Bissouma, I mean, that was a deal that there was all the subliminal Instagram stories, Arsenal shirts in bags and Arsenal coloured hats and all sorts of things going on. Why do you feel that move to Arsenal hasn't progressed?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I was just told last week that Bissouma looks like he's going to stay at Brighton now. That's all the guy said to me. He said, Bissouma doesn't look like it will happen. We don't think he's going to leave Brighton. So that seems a bit weird, but fine. Brighton are trying to build something themselves. Maybe they've managed to talk him into staying. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you on that one.
It's an interesting one, really, because with Bissouma, I'm speculating here. I don't know most of what I know comes from you and Pete, as you know. So I'm just, as a fan, reading between the lines, because a lot of links were in with him. And a lot of people are not going to like what I'm going to say. Maybe he's not as good as we all think he is. Because in the sense of, if Arsenal are not prepared and Liverpool are not prepared to pay the 40-odd million pound price tag for him, and they all want to maybe look at him a little bit longer, like, do you understand where I'm coming from? There's almost this element of maybe there are some flaws in his game where clubs don't think he's worth the money that Brighton are up. That seems like the only logical reason. Because if Liverpool and Arsenal were in for you and you're worth 40 million and they're going to pay 40 million, I can't see a reason why you're staying. Does that make sense? No, yeah. It isn't like he's in a Leicester situation where maybe he believes, Brighton are going to make the Champions League next year or something along those lines. It isn't like, I'd even understand it if he's not going to Arsenal because Liverpool look like they're going to make a move. It's stand at Brighton. So yeah, it's an interesting one to see how that one transpires as well. Arsenal have been linked with Ruben Neves as well and Aouar. Are they just sort of in that same situation? They're just difficult to get done because of Arsenal's current predicament of not being in the Champions League, or is it more a case of money?
I mean, I haven't even heard much about Aouar, to be honest. But in terms of Neves, they've definitely tried that. Again, the player not sure if that's the right move for him at this stage. And with Man United also in view for him, he'd rather wait things out and see whether that's actually can come to fruition. So you can understand why he would do that. I think this is Arsenal's big problem. We said it straight from the day the window opened. They genuinely didn't know who they could sign for the club at a time when they didn't have European football. And you'd think that guys like Basuma would be the ones that they would be able to get, but maybe not. Maybe as a player you think, well, hang on, if they want me now, then who's going to want me in a year's time if I have another good year? Like, players are having to be a little bit smarter about the way that they make transfers at the moment, because they've seen so many examples in the past 2 or 3 years of players going to clubs and not make the mark that they thought they could, and suddenly they're frozen out. They're not getting games. They're being sent out on loan. Then they're being moved around at a cut price. It's just not really worth it. So if you think you can, if you think that Brighton are still emerging, if you think that Brighton are going to get better this season, which people at Brighton genuinely think if they sign the striker that they want and they can have a good season and get into that top half of the table, then maybe in a year's time, maybe even January, you've got other clubs knocking on your door and looking to make a move.
There we go. We had a question here from South London's finest, one of our moderators. That isn't the question. That's him asking everyone to smash the like button. So make sure you are hitting that like button, please, ladies and gentlemen. He did have a question as well. He said, Dean, are we looking, he's an Arsenal fan, this is at a right back?
Yeah, I do think it's one of the positions that's not necessarily a priority, but it's definitely being looked into. I haven't got any new names on that front, but obviously, particularly with the Bellerin situation, they're looking for a right back that's really good at throw-ins. No, I'm joking. but they won't miss Bellerin's throws for sure. But yeah, that's definitely one of the positions that they're looking at. As I said, there's 6, 7 even positions that they've looked at the start of the window that they want to fix, they want to improve, and right back is one of those.
There we go. Arsenal fans, any of our members, you can get your member chat questions into Dean now in relation to the transfers. Can't guarantee Dean will not BS. He will not say he knows about it if he doesn't know about it or if he's not heard anything. Get those in now. Any super chat questions you want to put forward, please super chat in, but smash that like and that share button and subscribe to the Football Terrace. Also, a lot of Chelsea fans still clucking for information. Big news over the course of the weekend. And I do want to ask your opinion on something as well within this, that a £130 million, potentially rising to £150 million bid is being prepared, being looked at by Roman Abramovich for this player. Haaland, has anything progressed as far as you've heard? Have you heard any kind of rumblings that this bid, when this potential bid is expected? Is this potential bid expected?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that Chelsea have realised is that the only way this is going to happen is if it is a cash deal. Yeah, we all read about the potential of pushing Hudson-Odoi and Abraham in that direction. That wasn't an official offer. That was just something that was mooted and was just knocked back. They wondered whether Timo Werner might open up as a good option to go the other way. I'm told that Timo Werner doesn't want to join Borussia Dortmund. He was always under when he left Leipzig, it was like, if I stay in Germany, I'm going to Bayern Munich. That's the only club I'm interested in. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the Premier League. And at that moment, Bayern weren't interested. One day, they potentially will be again. I don't think that Roman is right now, unless Lewandowski does join Chelsea. But yeah, I think Roman Abramovich sees this as a massive opportunity because he knows Real Madrid and Barcelona can't make an offer for Haaland. And because of that, this is their best moment. Like in a year's time, they're going to just be part of an auction and they can put forward an offer. They can put forward their project. But end of the day, they're not Barcelona or Real Madrid. And it's hard to compete with that. So in that sense, it's worth paying the premium, the 100 million premium to sign him a year early. And it's basically where they're heading. Yeah. Talked about FFP earlier and how our owners can put in their own cash this year. And again, that's another aspect to this that works in Chelsea's favour right now, because that probably won't be the case in a year's time either when they come to the transfer window. So Abramovich has got the money to put into this. He's still got Lukaku in the background. Don't forget about that. Like, it's not Haaland or bust, because he knows that Lukaku could do an equally good job. But Haaland's the man that they're going to try for. He's younger. He's the player of the next generation, isn't he? And it's something to try for. But the bid's got to come soon, because if it doesn't, Dortmund aren't going to let this drag on. We've seen that with Jadon Sancho. They've got a season to prepare for. They've got a new manager trying to play a different style of football for next season, and they'll just close the door if this drags on into the new season. So really, I mean, when you look at it like that, you've got 2 weeks to sort this out and get your offer in.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, it needs to come sooner rather than later. It's the longer you leave it with Dortmund. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the Marlon being a replacement for him. Do you see that as a replacement for Haaland? Or for Haaland?
No,
or
I see it more of a Sancho. Yeah, I think that although Marlon's played centrally a lot, I think that we'll probably see him play as a wide forward as well. I think he's just a really good option that they've got that can help make up for that. You know, you're losing Sancho, you're basically losing 20 goals, 20 assists a season, and that's what they need to make up for quickly. And Marlon was always on the radar as the guy that could make that step and help that transition. So no, I don't think that's really a Haaland replacement. I'm not sure where they'll go on that front, but again, it's another aspect they have to consider, because you can't lose Haaland in that last week of the window and not be able to replace him.
Of course, and you mentioned Lukaku as well. I think in the last week or so, the Inter Milan president, whose name eludes me, has reiterated again, not for sale, staying with us next season, etc. Is that just posturing? Are they expecting a bid to come in your opinion, from Chelsea, or is this again a case of hurry up and sort the Haaland situation out, so that if that doesn't happen? Because if you go for Haaland in the last 3 or 4 days of the window and it doesn't happen, it makes it even harder then to get Lukaku, I would assume, because there's no time for Inter to sort themselves out. Is it likely that they would go back in for Lukaku? Would you say that deal's almost getting to a point now where it's worth forgetting about for Chelsea fans?
I mean, it's still there. I mean, for Lukaku, he was really holding out to see how bad things potentially got at Inter Milan this summer, because end of the season we were potentially looking at a fire sale at Inter Milan. They couldn't get the funds available that were needed in order to even maintain the squad that they had, let alone add to it. They cashed in on Achraf Hakimi, which helped them bring money in, and that's kind of appeased things a bit. And most of that Inter squad is still going to be there, and Lukaku really, really is enjoying his time there. He's obviously got a fantastic record, and he's completely happy to continue in that place. The only thing that's kind of niggling away a little bit is that he has always had it in his head that he wouldn't mind going back to Chelsea and just proving what he's capable of. And the first stint didn't go very well, even though he was so young and just never got that chance to show what he could do. He knows he could do that now. Chelsea have made an offer in terms of personal terms, so he knows what they're willing to pay him. But it's not really moved at this stage, so we've just got to wait. Again, over these next 2 weeks, we'll see what movement is made on the Chelsea striker front, and then if Haaland can't be done, I do think they will try for Lukaku. But Inter, of course, they won't want to sell him.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Get your questions in. Member chats, super chats. Make sure you're getting that done for us on the terrace this morning, and that you subscribed and turned on that bell notification. If you don't, most people don't get notifications from YouTube all the time. We know that. We're a channel with 203,000 subs. We only get 22,000 notifications sent out a week. We have a Telegram group set up. The link is now in the live comment section and in our description below, where we put all our notifications when we're going live, so you'll never miss any again. You get no spam in that group. You put yourself on privacy settings. No one gets your number. It's very, very safe. I control it only. So sign up for that now. It's free of charge, and you'll never miss another notification from us again. Now, Dean, another player linked with Chelsea, maybe some rumbling still for Man United. You mentioned that central midfield role is Declan Rice. You said a little while ago in the show that, with West Ham had a terrible summer, really. They haven't really grown their squad and developed their squad from what was an excellent season last year. Declan Rice is still looking to move. Has there been any has there been any kind of change in the stance or any kind of progression from the likes of Chelsea in trying to sign him?
No, not yet. No, this hasn't really moved forward. Still at a situation where if that offer comes, then Declan's going to want to jump at it. But he's got to wait for Chelsea to make an opening bid, an acceptable bid, however you want to put it. There's talk of £100 million price tag on him now. That's obviously not realistic. Chelsea don't see that as reasonable. They see it somewhere 60 to 70 probably for Rice. That's what they've been planning for anyway. So look, Rice has done everything he can. He's refusing to sign. He's refused 2 contracts already. If they offer him a third one, he'll turn that down as well. He's frustrated because West Ham were in a really good place last season. They haven't added to the squad. They haven't even signed Jesse Lingard, who looked like a shoe-in for the squad. So where's their ambition? Where's their direction here? It's a tough one for him, especially after becoming such an integral part of the England team. And I think that's really just proven to him that he can make that step. He was obviously released by Chelsea as a kid. And look, when he was at Chelsea as a kid, like, he was such a big part of the setup, a big part of the whole academy. It was just at that time, the way that he was progressing as a footballer wasn't as quick as some of the others that played the same position as him. And it was, I know I spoke to people that worked with him at the time, and they said it was such a tough decision to let Declan Rice go because you knew what he was capable of. You knew what a big personality he was. But you just weren't seeing it, and you had to be, you've got to be ruthless sometimes, and sometimes they turn around and they bite you. But everyone at Chelsea's delighted to see the way that he has bounced back from it, and that he went to West Ham and he's shown exactly what he's capable of, and they would have no qualms about going back and bringing him back and paying money for him. They've done it before. They've made mistakes before, Chelsea. They'll make them again. But yeah, if Rice can be done, then they'll do it.
A lot of Chelsea fans, I know we spoke about this a few times, are still frustrated about their summer activity. What do you think the reason is for Chelsea being fairly inactive from a signings point of view? There are some Chelsea fans believe the club it's the same pattern. We win a major trophy and then we fail to invest. Or do you think it's more the case of they're working on 1 or 2 very specific types of players, therefore there's just a lot less activity and movement? And do you expect there to be a signing at Chelsea this summer, Dean? Yeah,
I definitely think there'll be a signing. I think that you've just got to trust that the club are just working quietly, and sometimes things do come out of the blue. I mean, look, Mark Guehi joined Crystal Palace from Chelsea and was barely reported before it happened. Like, that's how quietly that deal was worked upon. And nobody got a sniff of it. It was done, and there you go. And you've just got to trust that this is how Chelsea do business a lot of the time. They're not looking for a big PR win here. They're not looking for newspaper headlines that show that they are in for big players. To be honest, I think they're almost annoyed sometimes when there's constant headlines about them trying to sign Lukaku, trying to sign Haaland, trying to sign Rice, because it builds that expectation of why is it not happening yet? Why is it not happening yet? And Chelsea do things in their own time. They've got a great business model. They're very good at what they do. Marina's one of the best in the business. And the people around there have got full faith in the fact that Chelsea will make a statement still in this window, and that they'll sign at least 1 significant player.
What's really interesting about you saying that is the rumours I mentioned earlier about the £30 million bids, etc. £130 million bids for Haaland rising to 150, and Chelsea wanting things to be quiet. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I sort of sit there and think, if those were completely made up, in the know, nonsense rumours, I kind of feel like certain journalists who will be left unnamed at this moment, very Voldemort style, would have just come out and said, that's just nonsense. but they've not been confirmed nor denied, which sort of feeds into this kind of what you're saying, and what a number of people that I've had conversations with in the last few days have said, that Chelsea just want to do this almost quietly. They don't want it to be this big kind of fanfare around the kind of transfer, as it were. So yeah, Chelsea fans, stay relaxed. We have a super chat here from Selection. This is anything on Liverpool, and I did want to gauge your opinion, Dean, on what Carl Markham said yesterday in, I think, his independent article, that it's unlikely Liverpool are going to make any more signings after Ibrahima Konate, the £36 million centre-back from RB Leipzig. What's your take on this statement from a man who's obviously, we know he's close to Liverpool. He works on their press pass show on Liverpool TV. So he's obviously connected to the football club to a degree. Could you imagine Liverpool not making any more first team squad signings this summer?
I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable. I think we've been pretty clear in the fact, and anybody that covers Liverpool knows that they have to sell a few players before they can even consider doing anything. So the fact that they might not do any business is reasonable, because they don't know what kind of money they're going to get in. And centre back was the one position they've really needed to fix, and they've now got options there with Konate coming in. You look across the midfield and you think, okay, well, they've brought in Thiago last season, who you would imagine is going to be a lot stronger this season. They've still got Fabinho. They've got Keita, who's still got a point to prove. They've got Curtis Jones breaking through. They've got Jordan Henderson's being spoken about leaving, but for all we know, he might have the best season of his life at Liverpool and sign a new contract in a year's time. Then they've got Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Maybe he'll leave. There's potential for him to, a couple of clubs have inquired about taking him on loan. And you look at the front line and you're like, well, they've got Harvey Elliott, who they're trying in different positions at the moment, and they hope he's ready to make his breakthrough. If he's not, they'll loan him out for another year, and he'll go again the year after, because he's a great talent. They got Minamino, they got Jota, they got Origi still, backing up the big three of Mane, Salah and Firmino. Like, you tell me where there's a real weakness there in that strongest 11, that strongest 14, 15 even, and there's not really one, unless they get another massive injury to a key player, which you can't just go and make a signing in case of that. Like, Liverpool, they want to only make signings that they know are going to help them for the next 2-3 years beyond Salah, Firmino, whoever is the first to go out of that front three combination. So it wouldn't totally surprise me. No, and look, he covers Liverpool. He's clearly been briefed on that line. Like, it's a realistic thing that could happen.
There we go. It could happen, Liverpool fans. You may not be making any more signings. And do you know what the interesting response from Liverpool fans has been? It's been a mixture. We had about 3 or 4 callers yesterday. Some raging, some very relaxed, almost. In FSG we trust. The one thing about the majority of Liverpool fans on social media, there always tends to be this collective togetherness when it comes to whatever their club's doing. Even if they're angry, they will not say they're angry. It's something they do behind closed doors. They'll scream into a pillow as opposed to sort of tweeting about it and putting the club down. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if this tactic works for them. I said yesterday, and I stand by it, I think they can still make the top 4 without any more signings. Winning the league, I think that's going to be difficult, especially if the Chelseas and the Man Cities pull off the Grealishes and the Haalands and the Rices between now and the beginning of the season. But if none of those deals happen either, then Liverpool's gamble of not going in hell for leather again after a season of not making anywhere near as much money as they thought. They're clearly not making as much money off of this brand new Nike deal, which they said was going to change the world. But there is going to come a point for Liverpool, I think, where they keep pushing kicking the can down the road to the next window is going to be a big window for us. There's going to come a point where they're going to have to spend a little bit of money, and maybe that's when, as you said last week, maybe when the likes of Mo Salah leave or look to leave in a year's time and they raise some big money, maybe then it's going to be reinvested under the model that the Liverpool have.
Yeah, maybe that. I mean, as I say, like 2 years ago, Liverpool were far and away the best team in the country. Last season, they had big problems, and it meant that they couldn't compete. But they'll be back, and Jurgen Klopp has got a point to prove himself. I think it's a big season for him. He also wants to, you know, he's as frustrated as anyone by FSG and the fact that signings have been hard to get through the door. You know, he even struggled with Thiago, who he was desperate for, and he got him in the end. But he now needs this team to come back together again. He needs to find that unity. Hopefully, some of them will be a bit fresher for the new season. I wouldn't write Liverpool off. No, I really wouldn't.
I hear you on that, mate. I really do. We covered everything off that was on our to-do list today. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone that's tuned in, a lot of questions that have come in. We can't go through all of them there. We'll try and pass them on. A lot asking about Bowen going to Liverpool. Listen, I think it's like all these deals. If the money's right, they'll do it. If they get the right players out, they'll do it. But as Dean just said, maybe, just maybe, no new signings coming in for the remainder of this window for Liverpool. Everyone who's tuned in this morning, a massive thank you to each and every single one of you. Do me a big favor again and hit the like button, subscribe, sign up now to our notification system. All of that is in the description below, and all of our social media accounts are down below as well. So go and follow us across all of them. That would be brilliant. But until later on today, take care of yourselves. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you all again